Anyway, good afternoon. I'm Carol Maddock and I'm based at Swansea University and work within the Centre for Ageing and Dementia Research and also within the Faculty of Science and Engineering. So first of all, I'd like to thank CADA for the opportunity to present this webinar on exploring a solar energy transition with villagers in rural India using a participatory video with most significant change approach. Before I go any further as well, I'd also like to thank very much my colleagues for their support on the project and on this presentation, and in particular the Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Mumbai, and that's Professor Siva Raju, who is a director there, and the researchers who are out in the field, Khushbu Ahire and Dr. Gandharva Pednekar, and also Professor Mina Sonika Blanc and Soledad Muniz, who are on the advisory board of the project. So I'm trying to move on and it doesn't want to. There we go. So first of all, what I'm going to do is give an overview of the Sunrise project, which is the strategic university network to revolutionise international solar energy. So it's just as well it's abbreviated to Sunrise because it's a lot easier to say. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, about the social science aspect of the study, which is what I've been involved in, a background to solar energy transitions, and then really focusing on this particular aspect of the project, which is the monitoring and evaluation with the participatory video with most significant change. I seem to only be able to move it forward on one way. Right, so first of all, Sunrise aims. So the overarching project sits within this wider technologically driven project. And the Sunrise project was funded by the Global Challenges Research Fund, which was part of a 1.5 billion Research and Innovation UK fund to establish research that addresses global challenges in developing countries in particular. So this slide here is basically taken from the Sunrise website. So please feel free to I'll send a link later actually to have a look at this website in a bit more detail, so it gives you different aspects of the overarching project. The key aims of the project were about global collaboration with aims to accelerate the development and integration and adoption of renewable energy technologies. So the Sunrise collaboration was led by Swansea University, but included leading universities both in India and the UK, and also in collaboration with businesses and industry. So it was very much transdisciplinary. It included engineers, physicists, chemists, social scientists, architects, etc. So the project as well was about growing the capabilities of this included in this transdisciplinary collaboration. So throughout the project, we held lots of international conferences, knowledge exchange networks. There were exchanges of researchers and training and workshops, and it's been a key aspect of the project to actually make sure that we were continuing the development of the people, of the researchers and the industries involved within the project, so that it was a constant knowledge transfer process. And the next aspect then of the project is about building sustainable communities. And it is vital that the state-of-the-art technology is applicable in real-life contexts. And this is very much where my part of the research and social science part of the research comes into play, as ensuring that these state-of-the-art technologies are in fact usable in real-life contexts to benefit local communities and industries. So sorry about the delay in this. Anyway, so as I was doing my research, this quotation here, that every energy transition has had its winners and its losers, both economically and in terms of social justice and community cohesion. And this has been sort of at the back of my mind when I've been involved in the research activities. So it's when we talk about energy transitions in this case, we're particularly looking at a change from fossil fuels such as wood and kerosene to renewable energy sources such as, in this case, solar, but also wind, etc. So when we're talking about these transitions from one form of energy source to another, we want to consider it in terms of the social justice and making sure that that there are beneficiaries, or there are equitable beneficiaries. So it's quite a complex set of circumstances when we're actually driving forward transitions. And if you think about, there are often power imbalances when the drivers perhaps might be governments and local governance, whereas the people who are going to be some of the end users might be, as in this case, rural villages. And there's sometimes potentials for local communities to be suspicious of what's going on, about what, who is going to be benefiting mainly from this process. Because historically they might have been involved in other similar sorts of exercises, and the benefits have not been quite as clear cut as have been promised. So there's sometimes a little bit of distrust in the motivations of those driving such projects. And conversely, there might be also a lot more expectations, greater than the capacity of the project to be able to deliver. And so we have to really be balancing these two, this tension really. There's been an increasing amount of literature that talks about public participation in energy transitions, because we must take account of all the different stakeholders and the potential changes to individuals and to communities, and the lifestyle or governance that might be affected by the consequences of this drive towards sustainability. And it's also the process that we must sort of take people along with us as we're going in these sorts of transformations. So with this previous comment in mind about the potential for injustice and the idea that we should really consider this in real life contexts, we and this was Professor Vanessa Burholt was involved in this from the start, who was involved in CADA at the time, and she was driving this aspect of the public involvement engagement within this project forward. So we had to try and make sure that we were considering the state-of-the-art technology in real-life context. And so we did a rapid review of the principles of public involvement and engagement to actually make sure that we were considering all the different aspects when we were looking at this renewable energy transition. So we took a great deal of the frameworks with which we were going to carry out the research in place. And this is, I'm sorry, it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but basically we derived a strategy for public involvement and engagement, which incorporated things like the national standards for public involvement, which were some of the drivers behind how we would so you might recognise the inclusive and equitable opportunities, etc. So we try to incorporate that as well as things like the SENS capability framework when we were considering how we were going to involve the public fully in the process. And we also piloted some of the techniques that we were using, the participatory arts-based techniques. And so in combination then, this is what we took forward when we were actually carrying out the research activities when we went into CUDED. Yeah. So this is where the research took place. So this is India and Maharashtra. And then CUDED, a small village that is about 120 kilometres from Mumbai. And the nearest towns to this village are 16 and 26 kilometres in opposite directions. So the population is approximately 500, and it comprises of about 80 families. So the main source of income for this community is surplus agricultural produce, but it is mainly subsistence farming that is carried out in the village. So some of the families have seasonal migrant male members. So that means that there is insufficient income to keep the population in the village for the whole time. And in fact, it's not just male, it is males and females that do migrate, or families, in fact, that migrate because there is insufficient funding to be able to allow them to stay in the village for the whole year. So this is an overview of the Sunrise research. So this is the overarching Sunrise project, and I'm going to be talking about mainly about the bit on the end, which is the participatory monitoring participatory video with most significant change. But to give you sort of an overview about the research and what it entailed, this gives you sort of a bit of a flow diagram, and you will hopefully be able to see by some of the dates some of the key things that happened in the world outside of this piece of research. So of course COVID impacted quite significantly on the project. So basically it was I'm sorry, another quick sip of water. So it was a mixed methods study in the village of Kuded in Maharashtra, and it was a 3-phase data collection, and so those are indicated on the slide there. So phase 1 was conducted in January 2021, and that was a pre-build survey, and it was a quantitative survey of a member from each of the main households. So there was interviews with 80 people, and that was sort of quite an in-depth quantitative, which covered all aspects of their livelihoods, etc. And then we had some focus group discussions with key stakeholders, and there was the participatory approaches to encourage community involvement. And this is some of the things that you see there on the right hand side of the slide. So again, and I think you can also see that people are wearing masks. This is during COVID, but obviously during some of the opportunities that we were able to do some travelling between the villages and Mumbai, which is where the researchers from TIS are from. So some of the research activities, these are the participatory research activities that looked into, they went from almost like an individual to a community type basis. So as I said, that was the phase 1 in January 2021, and then things happened and we were unable to carry out with the project as we had initially intended. So in fact, that you can see that the building, the community building, which is there on the bottom of the screen, wasn't officially completed until August 2022, with the official opening in October 2022. So the time frame with which we wanted to be able to see the results of the building has been compacted. So ideally we would have wanted to see the building being in operation for probably about a year was the plan, so that people would have the opportunity before sort of carrying on and doing the post-build surveys. But we've had to constrain that into the remaining phases. So you can see phase 2, which is the post-build survey, took place in February this year, and some of the semi-structured interviews also took place between November and February. So the main focus of this presentation is going to be this participatory monitoring, which actually took place in November and December last year. So as you can see, there's been a whole, so the latter parts of this research have been sort of quite compacted. So we haven't had a huge amount of time to actually have the demonstrator building or the Solar Oasis in operation. So just to give you a bit of background about the pre-build survey. So this was carried out, as I said, before the building took place, and it's a census style survey. And we looked at interviewing people and also some secondary data. So the majority of the population in the village is less than 35 years of age. So that's 72%. The joint family system, and the mean household size is about 6 members per household. And as was indicated earlier, the main occupation is farming, but of that, 35% do not own their own land, so they're working off other people's lands. So the majority of the income is the sale of agricultural produce. And there you can see the sort of the assets in the community and types of Jeep, refrigerator, etc., that is owned within the community. So also then to give you a bit of background about how the energy use is, and a little bit of more detail about the village as well. So the main sources of lighting were kerosene with and a little bit of electricity. And I did mean to, I can't remember when I was going to say that in some of the buildings you can see that there is mains electricity to the village, but it's very unreliable. So the main reason for not using electricity is it's unaffordable, and the electricity charges are sort of quite huge. And those are this sort of typical household has 3 bulbs, 2 tube lights, and 2 ceiling fans. So the agriculture is also quite a major use of electricity. There's water shortage for quite a consistent part of the year, and yeah, and also health is quite an issue as well. So that's just a bit of an overview about what's being used there. So to give you an idea of on this slide as well, the types of use of the energy and then the types of bills that are there as well. So you can see that the average monthly electricity bill, and this is actually giving you some indication of both the pre-build and the post-build as well, is that we've got, if you actually sort of multiply that up, the electricity annual cost is pretty much the same price as is available to the community members. So again, electricity, there's load shedding, which means they don't have access to energy, and that's actually got worse between 2021, which was 2.7 hours, to post-build. So that there's even more inconsistent main supply of electricity. So that gives you a bit of an indication of the background. So basically, to give you an overview then of a solar energy transition, so they're vital to achieving climate change targets, and India is at the forefront of the of renewable energy. Oh. Right. Okay. So sorry, I was just sort of I think I sent Kim an earlier presentation, not particularly the one that I was doing. Either way, that's a bit confusing for me, but that's fine. So the transitions are vital to achieve climate change targets, and so they tend to be driven from a fairly top-down perspective. But India is sort of up ahead and is ranked 4th in the world for renewable energy, and it is pushing ahead with this agenda. But at the moment, we don't really know if these transitions are equitably beneficial. And the involvement of stakeholders is quite critical to successful transitions. So we wanted to actually show a way of actually making sure that we were involving members of the community to get their perspective. And that's what we've carried out within this project. So I'm now going to actually talk about the particular part of the project, which is about the participatory video with most significant change. And so the idea about this is to really provide the deeper contextual understanding of a transition from the members' perspective. And so he wanted to sort of gather people together to really understand what it was from their point of view and in their own words. And that's what the benefits of this particular approach, approach takes. So we wanted to understand how villagers defined and selected what has been the most significant change to their lives following access to this Sunrise Solar Oasis building. And you can see that was the artist's impression of, and then the actual building that is there on the slides there. And then this was during some of the participatory arts-based activities at the bottom there. So we also wanted to know and find out from the villagers themselves, those experiencing the change, what recommendations that they would like to present and what outcomes that they had been hoping for, and how can they prevent unwanted changes. And this was, as I said, part of a BA Luther Hume, determining equitable benefits, achieving transitions in renewable energy. So the methodology was using this participatory video with most significant change technique. And participatory video is quite a well-established methodology, and that's been used since about the 1970s. And it aims to capture some of these often overlooked perspectives. And it's really coming from the community's point of view, because it's got the potential to disrupt hierarchies of power. And what we mean by this is actually a lot of the time you have people, possibly like myself, researchers coming into a community and and taking on perhaps an external view of the situation. Whereas the whole point about the participatory video is that the direction is being led by the community members themselves, and really the overarching question is what has been the most significant change, and we're not particularly trying to direct the villagers in a particular direction. This process has been used successfully in similar settings, and for those particularly who have difficulty using both written and sometimes spoken mediums. So it's actually quite an inclusive approach to participation and to accessing the issues that are relevant to the community. So again, the most significant change approach is also a systematic approach to gathering stories and deliberating on different experiences and values. And the idea behind this, and again, this has been quite a well-established process, is that you're listening to different people's experiences of a particular issue. And this the whole process is about trying to create the setting for the dialogue between the community members, and it provides the framework for people to think about the lives and their changes. And in fact, often it is providing the time for people to do this as well, which are incredibly busy lives, and so actually sort of sit down and think about why they're doing what they're doing has been sort of really quite enlightening as well. So the participatory video with most significant change essentially creates the environment for the dialogue to happen and the framework to think about what's happening, and in this case as a result of a renewable energy intervention. Yeah, so this is some of the methods and the processes that we took. As I say, excuse me. So we went. I went out into the village in November last year, and we just had just over 2 weeks. So it's quite a compacted time frame, and that was negotiated with the community, and it worked around monsoons and harvest and festivals. So it's quite difficult to actually find a time frame, as you can imagine, on people who are dependent on agriculture and the daily processes that have to take place. So that was the time frame of the activities. We recruited a diverse group of villagers, and there was 13 of them in total, and they included 4 women and 2 men aged 18 to 35, 3 women and 1 man aged 36 to 59, and 1 woman and 2 men aged 60 and over. And they all attended a minimum of 7 sessions, but there was 10 sessions held in total, but all of them managed to attend the majority of the sessions. And most of the sessions we held were in the afternoon, generally about 2:30 or 3 o'clock, and that was basically after they'd had a horrifically early start to the day and had done a whole range of activities that were essential to the ongoing nature of their work and feeding, eating, schooling, etc. So they managed to give us 1.5 to 3 hours of their time every day before they then went back to eat and prepare for the next day. So it fitted in that time frame. And during the course of the session, we had some training we used an iPhone as the form of the camera. And we did some training and to sort of icebreakers to get people used to the idea of the whole process. We had a series of games and discussions and etc. So there's a whole host of activities involved in each of the individual sessions. Started, forgot to say actually, with the with consent, informed consent. So there was a lot of time spent on the first session in it, making sure that they were able to give informed consent about the whole process. Yeah, and so there was lots of activities and filming on location as well. So this is some of the activities taking place. So to give you a brief update on what the actual process is, a participatory video with most significant change. So the group comes together and shares their stories. And basically there's an agreement around the story that they particularly want to coalesce around one particular story, which could contain elements of lots of different perspectives from these different age groups and genders, etc. So actually come together around a story that they particularly wanted to tell. The films can be shared widely to learn, and the idea is that hopefully you can do a community screening, but not necessarily so, because it's all dependent on the people taking part. There's a whole host of discussion and analysis around the themes and opportunities for improvement as well. As I said, there is a rigorous consent process which started from the outset with explaining what the sessions were intended to be, but because it is a process, because things change and because we were developing films, the consent was a process, and people reconsented to different aspects of showing the film out to the general population, etc. And in fact, globally, because I will be showing a bit of the film shortly. So knowledge is shared constantly via discussions and film showing. So there's like a feedback loop consistently. So this is some of the activities that took place during the course of the 10 sessions. So on the top right, the Could Disappearing game, that was what we did on the first day of the activity. So straight away, we're working between group discussions and actually hands-on camera use. In fact, quite a few of the members of the community had access to phones and were doing videos, and were probably far more professional than I was at taking phone videos as well, but not all of them. So we went through the process of explaining how to use the pieces of equipment. And so this particular disappearing game, they each taught the next person. So they disappeared, and the one person taught the next person how to operate the camera, etc. So it was all quite good fun, and hopefully you can see in some of the images that are on the screen, there's quite a bit of laughter and quite a bit of movement, and most of the pictures that I've got here are actually within the Solar Oasis building, but a lot of the time they were out on location filming various parts of what they wanted to describe. So that's hopefully yeah. So that's that. I was going to say something else about this, but I can't remember. Yeah. So this, I think, is absolutely fantastic. Part of the idea around the participatory video is, we create a storyboard which then directs the filming and the scenes that are wanting to be shared by those people taking part in it. And in fact, this is one of the this is the storyboard that one person in particular drew, though everybody contributed and added the comments and directed this story. But I just think it's just absolutely beautiful, and you can see it just shows the community members and different scenes that they wanted to capture during the course of the process. And I think if you look towards the end, there's also these ambitions around actually the solar building providing electricity to each of the individual households, which isn't the case at the moment, but either way, that's so I think it's just a beautiful depiction of by a Worley artist, and that is one of the tribal groups that was actually involved in the research, and they're quite famous for their art. So I'm now going to give you a very quick show one of the films that they produced. I mean, the complete film is about 11 minutes, but I'm just going to show you a very small clip. So hopefully you'll get a bit of a flavor.
कुडाची घरा होती काल ठोकूड भरून ते चिखलाने लिपून शेणाने पोचारले पाणी नसायचा माऊली पाळ्यात पाण्यावर जायला लागायचा म्हणजे बाहेर पाण्यावर जायला लागायचा माऊली पाडा कुठे कुठे पाड्यांवर जायला लागायचा पाणी आणायला पण आता कशी आम्हाला विहीर आहे पाण्याची समस्या थोडी आहे आपल्याला पहाटे 4 वाजेपासून आता सोलर दिले म्हणजे बिल्डिंग बांधले तिथं लाईट आहे चक्की दिली चक्कीवर दळतो आता दळून तेव्हा त्या भाकरी करायच्या कांडायचा तेव्हा त्या भात बनवायचा असं आमच्याकडं हे होती. सुपाणी पाखरायचा अशी आमची सोय होती. बाहेर गावी आम्हाला दळायला जायला लागायचा, दळणासाठी पाड्यावर जायला लागायचं दळायसाठी. पण आता आम्हाला आहे चक्कीची सोय, म्हणजे सोय आहे, चक्की आहे, भात भरड्याची मशीन आहे. म्हणून आम्ही आता म्हणजे दळायचा आणि भात भरडायचा आम्हाला प्रश्न म्हणजे त्या मशनी आहेत म्हणून हे सौर ऊर्जेमुळं आम्हाला बरा वाटला. म्हणजे काही असं म्हणजे आम्हाला दळा काढायचा एवढा टेन्शन नाही राहत.
Well, I think that sort of depicts some of the activities, and as I said, that was just a short part of the film that was produced by the community during the time that we were there. And I'm afraid I had to try and abbreviate it, so I'm not even sure whether that was so hopefully I haven't altered the meaning in the language, etc. But that was my inadequate skills in trying to limit that size of the film. But anyway, so this is the so some of the equipment that was bought to go into the Solar Oasis, and you can see, and that was in the film as well. You had the flour grinder, and the rice husker at the bottom, the red machine. And there's a refrigerator that is aiming to, or was aiming to, actually refrigerate jasmine flowers, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail in a minute, and a bamboo cutting machine, which they use for actually as a self-help group and for bringing income into the community to hopefully reduce that time that people have to migrate away from the village to actually get paid work. They can actually hopefully do that in the village now. There's also the power charging for phones, which is fantastic, and I think that's the graph there shows about the different functionalities or the different machines and pieces of equipment and its use. And as you can see, the refrigeration unit is a 0 because there's been an issue around that. But either way, I'll explain that in a bit more detail as well. So some of the findings, we found that there have been changes in everyday lives and activities since the Solar Oasis has been built. And so there has been quite a considerable reduction in time spent on everyday activities, such as the rice husking and grinding, which, as you can see, were really quite labour intensive, with the women taking predominantly, if not all of the time, being an activity performed by women. So it's making a considerable difference to their lives. So at the moment, that is still both in operation to an extent. Because of the availability of the equipment for everybody. So at the moment you can see the rice husking machine and the grinding machine in use on a daily basis. So there's also economic opportunities. So again, you saw the refrigerator there, which I did explain isn't in use at the moment, but there are jasmine flowers, which are a cash crop. And the idea is that, I mean, generally when they're harvesting the jasmine flowers, it has to happen about 4 o'clock in the morning, and it has to be done excuse me, quite early in the morning, and it takes quite a considerable period of time. And to make sure that they're still at their peak of freshness, they have to be taken to market straight away. And so the difficulty in getting it to market has been a bit of an issue. So it's been quite a labour intensive process. And the idea behind the refrigerator is that they could actually sort of keep them refrigerated and still in good condition before taking them to market. In fact, there's been an issue, and I mean, I'm still not quite sure why, because other people use a similar process, but it's been tainting the jasmine and turning it slightly brown on the outside, and almost like rendering it invaluable. Not invaluable. Anyway, yeah, worthless. Worthless is the word I'm looking for. Anyway, another social enterprise that's been carried out is with the bamboo cutting machine, and they're making bamboo crafts, which they can sell as well, and via a local NGO. So other aspects of the benefits of the building have been health checks within the building, and partly because of the consistent lighting that's available there, but also the availability of But also the access to reliable energy for using the equipment such as diabetes checking and hemoglobin testing as well. There's also the opportunity, they have the screen there to pass on public health messages. So these are the equipments that are being routinely used within the building, and the access to consistent available electricity has been proved highly beneficial to them. So also there are, and you can see the picture of the young man and the older gentleman playing instruments as well. So since the building has been there, they've held a couple of celebratory events, and music and dancing form, an aspect of that. So having a sense where there is lights and space has provided that as an opportunity as well. So there is the educational opportunities as well, and you can see that in the bottom there, where the school children are, can come and watch health promotion type videos within the confines. The school is probably about several hundred meters away. So it's just across a field to be able to get to this to the building, and they were very enwrapped, as you can see there. So there is a public space, and it has consistent lighting, so it can be used for all manner of purposes. But not everything has changed, or as we anticipate. But either way, yeah, it is being increasingly used as a building, so it is helping. So the other thing I was going to say at the moment, although you have electricity there is no Wi-Fi. So that is creating a problem. So the idea is that they were hoping to have banking and other things that they could access via the internet and via an additional bank of computers. But so they're still working on access to Wi-Fi at the moment. So some of the findings that we were as researchers that we were actually looking into was that sadly the group was not as diverse as we had intended. So we'd worked with the support of an NGO that had been working within the village for about 5 years, and they have been absolutely fantastic. Because they've been working obviously with the village on a variety of other things. So they were supporting the development of the wells, the building of the wells that you saw in that video, and they've been doing a whole host of activities regarding economic and well-being benefits with the community, and of course had advocated for the building being in this particular village as well. So there's a whole host of so the villagers are very supportive of this NGO, and in fact there are a couple of members who are working for the NGO that attended the sessions as well. So, but there were concerns as we found during the course of the sessions that we had, that the group might not have been quite as diverse as we had hoped, because we'd asked for them to try and recruit people from the different tribal groups, from different economic backgrounds, etc. So in saying that, it's not hugely diverse, but there are some people who are more landowners and some who do have to migrate and do not have as much access to jobs, etc. So there were differences, and I think actually, although the image at the bottom is staged to an extent, because this is what the community members wanted to show. They wanted to show about the electricity committee that a committee that has been pulled together to actually run the Solar Oasis, and so they were representing this for the film. But I think it just typically shows a slightly hierarchical stance there. So you have the people who are the NGO members sitting on the chairs with the other community members looking on. And as I said, it was staged, but I think that does, to an extent, reflect the certain power imbalances that were actually present as well. So So there were sort of slightly different agendas that perhaps we were not initially privy to, and I think that there was this desire to present something that was mainly positive, whereas we wanted to perhaps say, what have been the changes, whether positive or negative. They generally wanted to show a very positive outlook. And although I think, as I mentioned about the refrigerator not working, they were very positive about how it would be used and how it could be used, in spite of the fact that as yet it hadn't actually reached that stage. So we did feel to an extent that they might be telling a story that was approved or agreed by the NGO, but I think there was lots of discussions, and hopefully we tried to combat that potential. And in fact, there were issues raised that were discussed sometimes outside of the meetings, and in fact there was an issue around the bamboo cutting machine, and the idea was that the women in particular, it was going to be a self-help group. They were going to create bamboo materials that were going to be put on sale, and that would be an income that could then maybe reduce the need for migration, etc. But in fact, there was an issue around that, and this was raised in the group, but the discussions were held elsewhere because they didn't want that to be involved and portrayed in the film. So that was something they resolved around their payment as a daily wage to make sure that happened, as opposed to delaying payment. So yeah, so there was, I would have said, a bit of a reluctance to criticise either the NGO or perhaps the Sunrise partners that were involved in the process. But there have been changes in everyday lives and activities as a result of having the equipment, and already the equipment, it has been so well used that actually they're saying they should have really bought sort of the grinding machine and the husking machine to have a larger capacity, because it's barely coping with the needs of the community. And what they were hoping was that other communities around would actually be able to use their equipment, and so they would actually hopefully set up a slightly different payment scheme for people in the village to those outside the village using the equipment. I'm just trying to think, I can't see that. Yeah, so there's also the wellbeing and cultural activities that are taking place, and they're hoping to actually they had plans in discussions that weren't particularly portrayed in the film that they produced, but they're hoping to actually encourage greater involvement of nearby villages as well to use the space, and to be able to make that more of potentially, even in the future, a bit of a tourist attraction. And there are plenty of educational opportunities, but it will benefit having the Wi-Fi, which they are working on with the Tata Clean Tech Capital are also looking at how they can actually support that. That was one of our partners on the project. So this was the premiere of the film, and this was shown on the last day that we were in the village, and it was the idea behind some of the participatory video sometimes is that you can show this to a more extensive audience, so they could actually show movers and shakers, those people who have the power to actually like the local governance system is called a Grand Panchayat, so whether they could actually sort of use this to exert some more influence to bring changes and development, etc. But in fact, the community wanted to be able to show the film that they produced, but wanted it to be shown within the village. So that is what's happened here. So it was a celebration. We had food. There was award ceremonies. As you can see, I'm gratefully receiving a lovely little I can't remember, a rose, and I can't remember the name of the food container. So, and it was a really lovely event. It was very much community orientated, and there was lots of the family members and surrounding villages as well. So it's a great event. So in summary, the community members created and shaped their own responses to what has been the most significant change since the building has been there. And we were particularly interested in how the building might impact differently between young and old, between men and women, and perhaps different the different tribal groups that were present in the village as well. when we were looking at the access to the solar building and the energy within it. So the methods focused on obtaining local experiences and perspectives from the community members in their own words and images. We didn't guide them, only really around the actual use of the camera and support with the editing of the film. So the themes that were discussed, that were planned, filmed, produced, edited and delivered, were all under the direction of the community members. So in conclusion, there are enablers and blockers of change, and the actual process of participatory video with most significant change can provide insights into the whole cultural, historical and human context where the technologies are introduced. And we can sort of try and actually, from what is being shared, we can gather some sort of assessment of the impact of the building from the community's perspectives, rather than perhaps coming in as researchers thinking we want to know a particular angle. But we do need to still be mindful of the local circumstances and structures and hierarchies, even within the community. So there were power dynamics, both internal and external, both perhaps a slight pressure from that might be imagined rather than real. We would hope that they might want to be portraying a more positive perspective of what's going on, to make sure that they access future support and etc. So there are things around the dynamics. But the process and the time that we spent within each of the different sessions, each of the 10 sessions that we held, was really about, it was really, I thought it was absolutely fantastic, the discussions that were held and the conversations that they had in trying to work out how they were going to enact and get across while they were carrying out the filming, and went into the village and brought other people, which we can't show, but they talked to other members of the community, and it became very much a community. It felt very much like a community project that people were feeding into. But there are barriers, and and already, as I said, that the equipment that's there is insufficient for the needs of the community themselves, let alone the idea was that they would be able to bring other people from local villages to be able to use the equipment, and they'd pay a slightly higher rate to use them. But we definitely suggest identifying measures and community identified outcomes. So as well as thinking, right, this is what success means for us as going in as people delivering a building, delivering a project, we want to make sure that we're looking at things and measures from a community perspective and what's important to them, to make sure that they're achieving what they want with the changes to their circumstances. We're looking at knowledge transfer and best practice recommendations. So I think the process was great. Ideally, it would have happened over a longer period of time, and sadly that was curtailed both by the time I could and the TIS researchers in Mumbai could spend there, and the project was coming to an end, so we were sort of quite limited by the time frames. So in conclusion, thank you very much for listening. That's I'm sorry, it was a bit of a whistle-stop tour through that. I feel I might have hurtled towards it, but thanks for listening, and I would very much like to thank all of the participants who took part in the research activities, and to colleagues and the collaborators, and to the funders, the British Academy. Danny Raju was involved in the editing of the films, and he was there. I think you saw him in some of the images there. And if you wanted to get access to the videos, the full video, I can send the links probably in the conversation. Not sure, but thank you very much. And I think I can probably stop sharing there.
Brilliant, thank you so much, Carol. So we do have a few questions. Let me just open them up. So this is quite a long one. So how important an aspect of PP is education? Where did you hold any informative or engagement events? School seems like an obvious venue, but where did you go to engage with the wider community? Do you think that these events improve local people's understanding and support for the project? And then I'll pause there so you can answer it, and then I'll finish with the rest of it.
Oh my goodness, right, okay, yeah, wow. Well, in fact, I don't think it's particularly shown there, but it's actually is quite a small village. So where we were in the actual Solar Oasis is, as I said, is just sort of across a field towards the school, and so that it was used quite regularly by the school children and things like that, and making a little troop across there. I think I've actually forgotten the main thrust of the questions there now. It was, how did we, sorry Kim, I should have written things down. What was the?
No, that's all right. So how important an aspect of PP is education?
PP, public participation. Oh, yeah. Right, okay. Yeah, as I said, I think this sort of the actual participatory video was sort of a culmination. As I said, the whole project has been going on for a number of years, and so we have had communications and involvement, certainly from the TIS researchers' point of view. So they've been regularly going to and fro over a number of years, and so they've had they've been sort of accessing wider members of the community. Obviously this particular aspect was only sort of the 13 people involved in this project, but because it was very much out and about in the wider community, it involved members of the wider community, and so I think there has been this desire to make sure we were including. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, my dog's just come back from a walk. Yeah, so it's been sort of really important to make sure that we were involving the community from the outset. So hence we did those earlier sessions with the community members, and that was I think there was about 60 people involved in some of those earlier participatory methods, where they were looking at what the building was going to, even before the building was built, so what the building was going to contain, how they were going to be involved in to an extent the design. Obviously the design had to be sort of, with regard to the solar panel and the size of the building was quite limited, but the equipment that was involved was used in the building was certainly informed by the villagers. It's what they wanted to include in the building. So I think that was so from the outset there's been this desire to include and inform, which has been vastly reduced, sadly, because of COVID. So we couldn't actually go out and keep on telling people what was happening. And as I said, it was quite difficult actually to do the communications in the meantime as well, because you couldn't always get a phone signal either. So it's not only Wi-Fi, the phone signals were poor. So you could only get phone signals when you were oh, thank you. That's I can see the question now. That's really really helpful. Yeah, so right from the start, people were aware what we were aiming to do with the design of the building and the functionality of the building. So as I said, some of those earlier participatory approaches were about what would inform the what was going to be in the building, and who would use the building, and there's an energy committee, etc. So they informed what was going to be housed in the building, not so much the shape and design, but in fact they also did that. So there was a veranda included, which wasn't initially. So they informed that. So there were information engagement events were held initially in more public. There is another sort of public space where that was held before the building was created. And we were very much involved in the schools, and you could see the school use of the building was taking shape and going to be happening on a more ongoing level. so yeah, so I definitely think this ongoing move in between, you know, the design and infrastructure was built in from the outset, and I said that was the point of carrying out those earlier engagement activities, which didn't go entirely to plan, because that was during, as I said, during COVID, and so there was limits about. The idea was that you would have 4 different sessions. First of all, you know, you'd be looking at, you know, sort of like body mapping. So from a personal point of view, you know, what were the issues for individuals? And then it was more of, I don't know if you could see the, you know, concentric circles. How would do your immediate families and more removed families, how things might be impacted, and how that might constrain or improve aspects of what's going on in the village. And then more to the what was that called? It was the sorts of activities that people had to do on a daily basis, and they were sort of drawing that and working out, could the solar building actually support those activities in a different way. So these activities should have been like about a week apart, that sort of thing, but because of the COVID.
Thank you so much, Carol. So we've got another question here. I'll pop it in the chat for you as well. So it says, I appreciate that you have a diverse group of participants, but was it in fact still easier to arrange a mutually convenient meeting time than it would be in a, I'm going to say MEDC, but I'm not sure if that's correct even, as all participants still seem to have a similar occupational background and domestic concerns?
Yeah, I think we were a bit concerned about the diversity of the groups when we actually sort of went to because we basically recruited participants via the NGO that was active in the area, and I said that was definitely our concern, because we had requested, you know, the different age groups and the different genders, but we had also tried to talk about accessing people who were more marginalised and who might have been some of these people who had to leave the village and to migrate, etc., and who weren't the landowners. But in fact, it was difficult to find people who would take part, who had the time, because, as I say, the daily activities, people are, you know, pretty much subsistence farmers, and so their time frames are very much from dawn till dusk. You know, working around either, you know, sowing food, creating opportunities to food, or preparing food, or, you know, preparing the land, etc. So it was I don't know what a MEDC seems to have similar occupation background. Well, in fact, most of the people in the village are subsistence farmers. There were some people who were like the people who were well represented, as I said, and what was definitely an issue were the landowners and the people who had donated the land where the building was. So there was definitely an issue around objectivity, and we were concerned that people would be able to speak their minds and would not perhaps feel free in discussing some of the issues that might have been more difficult for them than it would have been for others. But in fact, there wasn't a huge amount of diversity. The majority of the village were subsistence farmers, so, you know, so they were sort of eating enough, you know, growing enough to eat and perhaps sell a little bit on. But so we did get that range, I feel, of people who were there, and it was the best time that was considered with the. It tended to be the same time each day, but over about a difference of about an hour or so. But that seemed to be the time, a bit of a lull in activities for everybody, and so that's why we selected that time, and that was with negotiation, and we decided that on a daily basis. So we at the end of one session we'd say, right, when do we come tomorrow? So we were trying to make sure that we were meeting at a time, and it's certainly at a place that people felt felt was appropriate for them. Then it would be in a what is a MEDC?
So we've just got through what a MEDC is. So MEDC, more economically developed country.
All right, okay, I should probably know things like that, but yeah. Well, yeah, I guess that we definitely found that was the pattern of behaviour. I mean, daily life started early. I mean, from about 4 o'clock in the morning, and finished fairly early. Because I said I didn't actually say very clearly, actually, but there is access to mains electricity, intermittent, very intermittent, but people still tended to go to bed when it was dark. Because, you know, so they start early in the morning and they go to bed fairly early at night. So it was quite, so they were actually giving us a fair sized chunk of their time, and it was, this is why we agreed, both the time as in the day time, but also the season time. It was a less arduous time for them. Most of the harvest had been carried out, and they tend to work on each other's fields, etc. So it was a bit of a lull when we were doing our activities out there, but it was incredibly difficult to negotiate when we were actually going to do the research out there, partly because of project constraints, but also because of what was going to work within the community for, you know, between monsoons and between harvesting and things like that. There was really quite a limited time where we could actually access, you know, a substantial number of the group.
Thank you so much, Carol. So we have another question. Done quite well for questions today. So was there any evidence of any ethnic tribal tension that affected various groups' ability to access the community facilities powered by projects?
Yeah, as I said, I think we were, yeah, it's quite difficult. And as I said, we were working with the NGO, as I mentioned, and they'd been working in the village for about 5 years. So if you remember that picture where you had them sitting in, you know, the two on the chairs. So one of them was external to the village and quite a senior member of the NGO. And one of them was a member of the NGO, but actually worked within the village. And so they've been working quite substantially in the area for quite some time. But I wouldn't say that there was ethnic or tribal tension within that village. That people seem to work and coexist. And I don't know whether it is, you know, the particular tribal groups. I'm not entirely sure, but there was just two main tribal groups in the area, and there is one more associated as landowners and one those who tend to work the land, but both are represented in the work in the research there, and there didn't appear to be any issues. As I said, there was one regarding that women's cooperative where they were actually working with the bamboo as sort of like an external means of getting income, and there were issues around that because most of the time any sort of work that's carried out is on a daily wage type system. So people do the work, they get paid immediately. Whereas what happened within this bamboo cooperative that was going to be encouraged was that there was discrepancies between, you know, they hadn't produced as much as or some produced more of the lanterns that they were making than others, and there was an issue around how could they make sure that payment was equitable. And so that was an issue that came up while we were there, but was, in fact, perhaps I shouldn't have said on the public, there's something that's going to be outside, but either way, that was taken out separately, and they discussed that. So it was raised within one of the sessions that we had, but it was not going to be included in the film because they didn't want to include that. So, but it was resolved. They took that aside and they resolved the situation. So I think I'm not really sure of the situation that was there, but certainly these groups are living, you know, seem to be living quite in harmony together. And so we were actually, it's very difficult when you're trying to come in and think, right, okay, that doesn't sound right, or is there equitable access to this building? So we were trying to ascertain that, but we were also reliant on the group themselves producing the film that they wanted to depict. And in fact, it was quite rosy. And as I said, we found out afterwards that the refrigerator wasn't working, but they wanted to say, oh, and this is what we're going to do, this is how it's going to work. Well, you know, it didn't work like that while we were there. So, you know, so I think they wanted to portray quite a rosy picture to an extent, but they also want to and are reliant on NGOs working within their community. So the NGOs had made sure, you know, to an extent with their funding opportunities to build the wells within the community. We're talking about the next stages of different aspects of farming that could be more profitable. So it's very difficult. It's hard for us to come in for a fortnight or so, even though the project's been longer term. And you know, we can't be in a position to be influencing things either. I think it might be a fairly delicate balance in what is happening within the community. But yeah, certainly from our perspective, they seem to be managing their situation and the direction of travel for themselves in quite a good way. Sort of, I mean, having the opportunity of this building seemed to be very perceived and seen as very, very positive from their perspective.
Great, thank you so much, Carol. So your last question. So obviously you worked with the local community, but was there any recognition from the regional and/or national government of your work? Was there any discussions as to how this could be replicated by local authorities across the country?
Yeah, I'm afraid not that I've been involved in the discussions, but certainly the Sunrise project as a whole have been working at that sort of level. And in fact, though it doesn't appear at the moment to be materialising, but the idea was, I mean, this is particularly around, you know, the solar energy, use of solar energy, but the idea was that the projects could be extended as well into the water, food and energy nexus. So you would actually look at beyond just use of solar, but so the idea was this great collaboration, which is the Sunrise network, which I sort of talked about, and the different partners, which were the UK and India. And you know, the idea is that this would then go beyond that, but yeah, I'm not quite sure how that is happening at the moment, because I think everything was incredibly positive for a while, and there was, I mean, Sunrise has won quite a few awards for its activities, but I might keep quiet on where it's heading from here. But I would certainly like to see that. So definitely, both local and national governments were involved in the higher. You know, in the different aspects of the Sunrise project that I wasn't privy to, sadly.